Hey everyone, Jason here with Upstart Epoxy, and today's interesting little project is I'm not actually going to spoil it for you. You actually have to watch it and find out what it is. Stay tuned. See, we're in the shop today. We're going to be doing an interesting little project using some live edge walnut chunks that we have left over from a bigger project. We've got two of them that have been split. So we're creating this nice little quarter river, half river design. And it is going to be a two-part pour. We are going to pour an opaque base to combine everything. And then we're going to embed some objects while the resin is curing. And then we are going to use some of the deep pour that we have left over to do the clear. So we're using the casting resin that we have a little bit left over from our testing, and we're also going to be using some of our deep pour that we have left over from some of our testing. We didn't have enough to do like a full project of either of them, so we're going to make do. All right, so let's get started. Upstart Epoxy's new casting resin. It may or may not be on the website already by the time this video comes out. And if it is on the website, there will be a link right up here. And if it's not on the website, then I'm just going to be pointing up here for no reason. So let's get started. So we've got our mixing vessel. We're going to go to 32 ounces, and we're going to start with side B because it's thinner. You always want to try to pour your thinner side first. It makes it easier to mix. So we're going to go to 16 because this is a 1-to-1 by volume. And this should actually pretty much take care of all that we have left. A tiny bit left, maybe for a small project. All right, let me go to our A. We're gonna mix another 16 ounces. Nice thick honey texture. All right. Now, the casting resin's a little bit thicker, so you're going to want to stir nice and slow not to introduce a whole bunch of air bubbles. So that's what we're going to do. And so we just, everyone's favorite part, the stirring. Now, because this is thicker, we don't want to use a mechanical stirrer or a drill stirrer. We just want to do it by hand, nice and slow. Try not to introduce too many bubbles. And you're going from that cloudy, milky color to the nice clear when everything's mixed up. And scrape your edges, scrape your bottom. You know, epoxy 101. We've already covered that in some previous videos. If you haven't seen them, go check them out. And then we just stir. And we stir. And we're going to keep stirring. So we'll come back when this is done. Okay, and we're back. We are at that nice clear consistency. No cloudiness. A little bit of bubbles got mixed in, but you know, with this quantity of resin, that's pretty much to be expected. We're actually going to do a little bit more mixing because we are going to be adding in, this is a silver pewter dark metallic mica, and we are just going to not measure. Looks good. We're going to get that mixed in. Yeah, we want this nice gunmetal-ish color going on. A little bit of black, a little bit of silver, a little bit of pewter effect going on. And that's a great thing about the colorants, the micas, the fillers, the additives. You can pretty much go for any effect that you want. And this is pretty much the effect that we were looking for. Look at that. Beautiful. Okay, we're still at about ambient, so good. These laser thermometers are actually really great when you're doing epoxy projects because you can check the temperature of the epoxy, make sure that, you know, if you need to cool it down, You can move it to a different room, better airflow, air conditioning, things like that. You never want a project to cure too fast. The epoxy has the possibility of cracking or ruining the project. So let's not do that. All right, nice little silvery pewter gunmetal color going on. And now, see, because this is a thicker epoxy, what we're going to want to do is we're actually going to want to hold down our project pieces with some weights or cauls. So I've got some little 2x4 blocks here covered with sheathing tape that the epoxy won't stick to. We're not going up to the level of it. Doesn't really matter. I just do it to be on the safe side. All right, now the wood won't float away. And from a height of about 8 to 10 inches or higher, if you want to resin bay. Hashtag resin bay. All right, well, we're gonna have a little bit left over, but we're gonna try to get the epoxy to worm its way in to these back areas, fill up all this little excess volume. Give it a little stir. Kind of get some figure going on in there. All right, well, that's it for this part of the pour. When we come back, we're gonna come back when the epoxy is almost mostly fully cured, slightly still tacky, and then we're gonna start throwing in our little objects that we're gonna embed in the clear pour. We'll see you in a bit. All right, and we're back. And as you can see, while we were waiting for this to cure, we added a couple little interesting things that we're going to encapsulate. And so this was a request by someone. So we're going to see how it turns out. Now for the base gunmetal, we did the casting resin, the 1-to-1 casting resin. For the clear coat, because it's going to be deeper, we're going to use the Upstart Epoxy Deep Pour 2-to-1. So let's get mixing and see what we can do. All right, so we've got right under, we're calculating right under 64 ounces of pour left. So we're just going to go with 64 just because that's a nice even number. So part A is going to require about 42 ounces. 42. And part B is going to bring us up to the 64. This is a 2-to-1, so it makes it nice and easy for your calculations. And right at 64. All right, now everyone's favorite part, of course, the mixing. But with the deep pour, we can do this. Start on low speed. Tilt. All right, seems like everything's where we want it. Now, some of this is adhered down, some of it isn't, so we're going to be really careful on our pour. And so we're going to start in a corner, and it's just going to slowly creep in where it needs to go. All right, I can tell right now that our math is going to be a little off, possibly. We might have to mix up a smaller batch to go in this, but we will be able to tell better when the walnut begins to absorb the epoxy, and if the level drops, then we will know to mix up another batch to go in here. Yeah, get to move some of the stuff around. Make sure it's kind of where we want it. All right. So there is our pour of crystal clear deep pour. And everyone's actual favorite part, popping the bubbles. You don't have to, but why not? Now, I cannot stress this enough, that in no way, shape, or form do I recommend ever taking a propane torch to live ammunition. We probably shouldn't take live flame to live ammunition. So, we're going to use the alcohol trick. Denatured alcohol, Mr. Bottle, hit the surface, break up that surface tension, help the bubbles release. There we go. Now we're going to keep our eye on this for the next couple hours or so, just to make sure the level doesn't drop too much. Walnut, when it's nice and dry, is really greedy when it comes to absorbing epoxy, which is good in a way because the epoxy will, get inside the wood fibers and really hold on. So we're going to get a really, really good bond for this whole thing. But we can already see air bubbles here and air bubbles here coming from the wood where the epoxy is getting soaked up. So we're going to do another small pour at some point in a couple hours, just to see. After about the 12-hour mark, we'll kind of understand what we need to do to bring the level back up to where we want it. So that's it for this part of the video, because this is going to be next several days of watching this. All right, we'll be back in a bit. Hey everyone, we are back, and we now have taken our beautiful deep pour board out of its mold. We've planed it smooth, we've cleaned up its edges, and we've sanded to about 240 grit or so. That way the gloss coating will stick nice and it'll clear up all of this cloudiness. So without further ado, we've got our 2-vessel pour system. We've got our SuperGloss coating. We've got our board made with walnut, some brass rounds, we've got the darker gray was a thin coat we did as an adhesive layer. Then we did the deep pour over the top of it, and we left that clear. So let's get started. So let's do by weight, 100 grams part A. Pretty much right on the money. And then 83 grams part B. Almost. There we go. That's the secret. Remember, pour the right amount the first time, every time, and you'll never mess up. Again, starts clear, 2 parts. As you begin to mix it, it goes cloudy, and we're going to look for it to go clear again. That way you know you've got a good mix, no swirls, no striations, no cloudiness. That way when you pour it, and everything cures, except for 1 or 2 little spots. And then when you go to touch it, you leave your fingerprints, looks nasty. You pretty much have to sand it down and do it all over again at that point. So proper mixing, very important, very important. That's why this is our favorite part, mixing, lots of mixing. And of course you're going to introduce some air bubbles. That's going to make it seem cloudy, but as it drips, you can see through it. Scrape your bottom, scrape your edges. Seems like we've got a good mix so far. Now, we are going to pour into our second vessel and then mix again. Now, when you pour from your first vessel to your second vessel, don't scrape your edges here. We're just gonna I'm going to leave this in case we need to do another mix. And go back to this one and continue to mix. Now, the fun part. Look at that. See, it doesn't matter how cloudy it is. When you add your gloss coat, the gloss coat soaks into those scratches, those sand marks, and it becomes an optical bond. Absolutely stunning. The gray, the platinum underneath really comes through. Very gunmetal-ish. Yeah. See, in this camera right here, as it moves, it completely clarifies all of the sanding marks. Absolutely beautiful. All right, now comes the messy part. Want to bring the resin to the edges and push it around. I'm just going to help it out and break that surface tension. Now, a lot of people use heat guns or torches to do this, but the less heat that you can add to the equation, the better off you are for a gloss coat, because some spots might cure too fast, other spots cure too slow, create uneven surfaces, and that's never a good thing. So very gently. All right, now that we've got it brought to all of the edges, now we're going to do our little spillover. Basically, we're just going to paint the edges with the epoxy. Now, you could use the foam brush that they include in the kit, but I prefer just do it by hand. That way you have a better feeling of what's actually happening. I'm not saying that this is better or a better way of doing this. This is just the method that I prefer. All right. Make sure we didn't miss anything. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. We could leave it like this. The bubbles will pop naturally. It will self-level. We're good to go. But where's the fun in that? Okay. Remember how I said try not to add too much heat? Well, we're not pushing the epoxy around with the torch. This is just for fun. A little bit of a flame. Just brush it over the surface. Pop those bubbles. Get that nice Instagram finish. There we go. Now, there is a second way that I actually prefer, and that's using denatured or isopropyl alcohol in a mister bottle. The alcohol is a solvent for the epoxy, which means you just spray it on the surface, and it'll do the same thing as the torch, but it doesn't add heat to the equation, which is really important. So, alcohol, lightly flame polishing. We're not heating the epoxy. We're not curing the epoxy. We are simply popping the bubbles on the surface, even though we don't really need to. They will self-release. All right, well, that is it for this gloss coating. And when we come back, we will see how it turns out. See you soon. All right, and we are back. Our gloss coat has cured to this rock hard crystal clear finish. We've got a nice little see-through on the side here. We've got good depth, good clarity. Beautiful piece. We still have to clean up the underside. Well, we don't know what we're going to do, if we're going to make it like a small little end table or turn it into a piece of wall art or even turn it into a tray. But that is for a different time. So, in conclusion, we did a gloss coat as the gray, and we used that as the adhesive for the insert material. And then we did the deep pour on top of that. And then we did another gloss coat on top of that to bring back the crystal clarity when we got it all finished. So 3 epoxies, 2 types, gloss coat and deep pour, working together. As always, from everyone at Upstart Epoxy, we want to thank you for joining us in this video. We hope that it could be slightly informative. If not, could give you inspiration on a project that you could do. Send us your projects. Tell us what you'd like to see. Tell us what you've done. Show us what you've completed with our epoxy lines. We'd love to see it. I, as a woodworker, would love to see it. I'm usually talking to people in the support channel about the different projects that they're working on. We're here to help. We really are. And if you have a question that we can answer, we try to answer it. So, again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.